When we talk about rocks, rocks are some of the features of the earth. They are, they are, they are part of the earth's landforms. And we have three major types of rocks. But before we go deep into rocks, I'd like to tell us that when it is time to talk about anything about rocks, maybe in an exam, because the whole reason why we study, aside from knowing, is also for exam purpose. That means we should try to make sure that you talk about the types of rocks, the mode of formation, the characteristics, and examples, and if possible, diagrams. With that, you get the whole point that is possible to get from answering such questions. So when we talk about rocks, we have three major types of rocks. We have sedimentary rocks, we have igneous rocks, and we have metamorphic rocks. We take igneous rocks first because igneous rocks. So for igneous rocks, these are rocks that are formed as a result of the solidification and cooling of molten magma, which erupts from the bottom of the earth upwards. Sometimes the solidification takes place before this magma gets to the surface of the earth. And in such cases, we have intrusive igneous rocks. And in other cases, the magma gets quickly to the surface. And in such cases, we have the extrusive igneous rocks. Extrusive igneous rocks. So, intrusive igneous rocks are formed. We get to see them over time when agents of denudation, that's erosion, tends to pull off the surface of the soil overhead. And over time, it gets to expose the rock beneath. Whereas for extrusive igneous rocks, it comes from the bottom of the earth so fast, from the earth's crust so fast that it gets to the surface. And once it gets to the surface, it just solidifies. Then something about igneous rocks is the fact that they are crystalline in nature. That means they contain crystals. Igneous rocks are crystalline in nature. In fact, igneous rocks are majorly the only form of rocks that have crystals. So they are impermeable. They are impermeable. Because they are strong, water does not enter them and melt them. They are strong, they are resistant to water in most cases. Igneous rocks do not have strata. What do we mean by strata? It does not have layers. It does not have lines in between or anything of such. Igneous rocks are compact, no strata, so they are non-stratified. And another thing is igneous rocks are non-fossilized. They do not contain fossils. What are fossils? Fossils are the dead remains of plants and animals that could have been part of a rock, because this also forms rocks, but not igneous rocks. So majorly, igneous rocks are crystalline in nature. They contain crystals. They are impermeable. They are strong, and they are hard. They are non-stratified, no strata. So they are non-stratified, and they do not contain fossils. And examples of igneous rocks are granite, basalt, and a couple of others. So those are examples of igneous rocks. Then when we look at the second type of rocks the second type of rock that we have, which is sedimentary rock. Sedimentary rock. These are the kinds of rocks that are formed as a result of the compaction forces of overlying rocks on maybe residual rocks or fossils or other kinds of materials. So igneous rocks are formed as a result of compactional forces, whereas we have different constituents. It could be broken down rocks. It could be normal soil, broken rocks. It could be soil. It could be fossils. And I said fossils are the dead remains of plants and animals. It could be sand. It could be anything. So igneous, sedimentary rocks are formed as a result of compactional forces. So this makes sedimentary rocks not to have crystals. So you can never see a sedimentary rock with crystals. It won't be possible. And sedimentary rocks are not strong. They are not strong. An example of sedimentary rock is limestone. And if you discover, limestone is easily breakable. There are different kinds of rock you might have come across. The stronger rocks, like granite, if you hold it, you haul it at another rock or the wall or the window, the thing you are hauling it at breaks or cracks, whereas the rock still stands. So it takes a lot of energy to actually quarry or mine these kinds of rocks. Whereas for limestone, if you hold limestone and you hit it against a stronger rock, it's definitely going to break. So sedimentary rocks are impermeable. They are not so hard. So they are stratified. Sedimentary rocks are stratified. What do we mean by stratas? Sedimentary rock has layers of different types of materials. This could be sand. This could be this could be stones. This could be fossils. So we have different kinds of materials. And these are the stratas, the joining points, the layers. These are the stratas. This point is the stratas. So sedimentary rocks always have strata because they are formed as a result of compaction. And they always contain fossils. Most times, you will see a sedimentary rock will have fossils of either bones or dead remains of animals compacted together. And examples of sedimentary rock, like I said earlier, is limestone. We have limestone. We have sandstone. We have coal. Sometimes coal and petroleum. These are all examples of sedimentary rock. And this brings us to the third type of rock, which is metamorphic rocks. Metamorphic rocks are formed as a result of heat or pressure on any types of rocks earlier mentioned, like the sedimentary rock or the igneous rocks. Metamorphic rocks are formed as a result of heat and pressure. So, an igneous rock could turn to be a metamorphic rock, or a sedimentary rock could turn to be a metamorphic rock. So this process where they change is what makes them metamorphic rocks. So a metamorphic rock could be crystalline or non-crystalline. So the characteristics of metamorphic rocks are not too defined because it could be of igneous rocks, it could be of sedimentary rocks. But one thing is sure, metamorphic rocks do not contain crystals, so they are not crystalline. Metamorphic rocks are non-crystalline. They could be stratified or non-stratified. They could be fossilized or non-fossilized. They could be permeable or impermeable, but they are non-crystalline. So that is a major example of metamorphic rock is slate. Now I'm going to show you what granite turns to when it becomes a metamorphic rock. I'm going to show you what limestone turns to when it's turned to a metamorphic rock. Looking at the metamorphic rocks, slate turns to marble. So marble is a good example of metamorphic rock. Metamorphic rock, it is formed from slate. Quartzite is another example of metamorphic rock. It's formed from sandstone, and gneiss is formed from granite. Granite is an igneous rock. When it metamorphosizes, it turns to gneiss. And slate, which is a sedimentary rock, when it metamorphosizes, it goes to schist. And then graphite, which is formed from coal. Graphite is actually what they use for pencil. So if you look at the lead in your pencil, is made from graphite. So looking at the uses of all the rocks together. So like I said, graphite is used for pencil. Rocks are seen as a source of raw material. When we take limestone, for instance, limestone is the raw material that is used for cement. And also, if we look at a couple of other rocks, there's a source of raw material for a couple of our manufacturing activities or construction activities. So rocks are a source of tourist attraction. Taking an example, look at the Olumo Rock. It attracts a lot of people to come and see it and is a source of tourism. Another example is the Zuma Rock in Abuja. Rocks are also sources of fuel. Coal and petroleum is a good example of this. Rocks aid in soil formation. When rocks are broken down to smaller bits and pieces, it helps in the development of soil formation. And we know the soil formation, the soil profile has different characteristics. And out of them, we have different sizes of rock materials and sand. And so the rock breakdown forms a part of the soil formation process. And lastly, rocks are used for construction purposes. Granite, limestone, like I said, and a lot of other rocks, gneiss, they are used in construction at various stages. So looking at that, we see that as rocks exist in our environment, they are also useful to man. They are useful to man. Sometimes rocks are even seen, they are used as a source of location of settlements. In the early days, when the forefathers wanted to locate the earliest settlements, they had to locate it behind a rock so that it can be protected from their enemies. Taking Abeokuta, for instance. And then sometimes the houses are built on rocks so as to provide them a solid foundation. So rocks are of different uses to man. Another thing I didn't even mention here is rocks are used as minerals and food condiments. Take salt, for instance, which is also a type of rock. Salt is used in our food as we eat every day. Virtually every single day, we use salt in our food. So rocks are of very important use to man, and then I'm sure we cannot do without them. So this is all about rocks, and we'll be going to mountains. When we talk about mountains are elevations on the earth's surface. Most mountains are way larger than rocks. And we have three major classifications. We have the fold mountain, we have the block mountain, and we have the volcanic mountain. And looking at the fold mountain, the fold mountains are formed from compressional forces within the Earth's crust. That means within the Earth's crust, we have forces. There are two major forces that I would like to talk about. There are convectional forces, which compresses together, and then there are the other type of forces, which we're going to get to when we talk about block mountains. So looking at the compressional forces, they are forces that push, they're pushing. So it's compressing on both sides of the Earth, within the Earth's crust. So what happens as a result of this? The land pushes together, then it turns to become a fold. A good example is when you take a towel or handkerchief and you fold it on a table, then you put your hand on it and push it together. One hand is compressing, the other hand is compressing, and the energy causes a fold. So we have a fold. So this is the resultant effect of the compressional activities that happens within the Earth's crust. So when we have this fold, we have this gives us the syncline, the lower part, which is depressed. We have the syncline, and the upper part here is the anticline, as we can see in this diagram. So fold mountains are formed by folding of rock layers. And the upper parts, which are on the top here, are the anticlines, and the lower part are synclines. Good examples of fold mountains include the Himalayas in Asia. The Himalayas range, fold mountains are always in ranges. They're not just, they are always vast. They are always vast. Sometimes they cover a couple of countries. Like the Himalayas in Asia covers Nepal. It covers about 5 other countries. And then another example is the Rockies in North America, which covers both Canada and United States. The Rockies is another range of mountains. It is not a rock. It is wide. It ranges. It is broad. It's a very, very large expanse of mountain. And then Andes in South America. We have the Alps in Europe. And then we have the Atlas Mountain in Africa. This is actually located in the northern part of Africa. And so those are the basic examples that we have of fold mountains. If we look at this picture very well to the right, lower right, you're going to see a real-life example of a fold mountain. If you look closely, you're going to see the syncline, low at the bottom, you see the anticline, you see the layers. So you can also check around online for a couple of other images when you Google fold mountains. And sometimes the compressional forces causes the fold to be so extreme that we have overthrusts. In such cases, we have something like this. And then instead of having a simple fold again, it goes like this. And then it's like the part of the mountain goes underneath the other. In such places, we have the overthrust. So these are always common with fold mountains. So when we look at the other type of mountain that we have, which is the block mountain, they're also called fault or block mountains. These are mountains that are resultant from tensional forces within the Earth's crust. Now, the other fold mountain is as a result of compressional forces. Block mountains are as a result of tensional forces, sometimes moving outward. So, in such cases, we have this force moving out, this force moving out, and then there's a drop. And this drop causes what we know as the graben, a valley. There's a depression. It causes a depression. This part is still elevated. This part is still elevated, but this part comes below. So we have a valley here, which we also call graben. So looking at the diagram we have here, you will see the upper part, which is the mountainous part. That is what we call the host or the block mountain. Then the depressed part, which is as a result of the tensional forces, is what we call the graben or the valley, rift valley. And examples of this can be seen in Black Forest. Black Forest is in Rhineland, is in Germany. Is a block mountain. And then the other one is Vosges. That one is in France. Is another good example of a block mountain. And then we have examples of valleys, the rift valleys. There's the great African Rift Valley, which can be found in between Mozambique. It's a valley that runs between Mozambique to Lebanon. So it's a very big range, it's a wide range, it's extensive. So block mountains always come in rift valleys and block mountains. So the depressed part is where we have the valleys, and the elevated part is where we have the host or the block mountain. This brings us to the next slide where we have the volcanic mountain. Volcanic mountains are formed from lava or debris, such as ash, rocks thrown out of the volcano. They are mostly formed from volcanic eruption. So we have ash. Ash is like burnt rocks or burnt materials. and we have a lot of materials that pumped out, or that erupts out from the volcano. And they are built up from eruptions that occur over thousands and thousands of years. So most volcanic mountains are as a result of a continuous accumulation of volcanic eruption. So we have a volcano which erupts today, and the lava, the ash, the debris, and everything that came out from the volcano is by the mouth. And then, in consequent years, it happens again. In consequent years, it happens again. In the long run, from maybe this point, when it was just a little, it keeps increasing and increasing and increasing. And at the end of the day, we have something high as a mountain. And this is what we call the volcanic mountain. This part where everything comes out from is what we call the crater. The crater is the entrance, the mouth of a volcano. So we have a good example of a volcanic mountain in Japan. They call it Mount Fuji. Mount Fuji in Japan is a good example of volcanic mountain. We have Mount Mayan in Philippines. We have Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa, and we have Mount Elgon in Uganda and Kenya. A volcanic mountain always has vents that runs through the mountain, and it is through these vents that the ash, the lava, the magma comes out from. And these days, we have active volcanoes and we have dormant volcanoes. Some are still active, some are dormant. So when we're treating volcanoes, we're going to be exploring the different kinds of volcanoes we have, the active ones, the impact of the eruption, and the dormant volcanoes. And with that, we come to the end of mountains.